What's good, y'all? Jalik from WearTesters.com here. Welcome back to the official WearTesters.com YouTube channel. Today I have a performance review for you on Kawhi Leonard's second signature shoe, the New Balance Kawhi 2. So before we get into the performance review, I do want to change things up just a little bit. Instead of going in our normal order from traction, cushion, materials, fit, support, I want to try and mix things up as far as ranking my categories. I feel like ranking my least favorite to most favorite is a little bit more of a challenge for myself. Hopefully it's also motivation as far as explaining some critiques that I may have with the shoe and provide a better experience or explanation for you all. Just keep in mind that just because I may like something about the shoe a little bit less than another part of the shoe, that doesn't mean that it's necessarily a bad thing. In some cases with some shoes it may be, but a shoe like this honestly is so close that some of the categories could have easily had one small tweak and could have been my favorite category instead of my least favorite, and vice versa. I hope that I'm making sense for all you guys, but with all that said, let's get into it. Coming in at number 5 as far as my categories for the Kawhi 2, this was actually a tough one to do, but I'm gonna have to start out with the cushion as my least favorite aspect of the shoe. The full-length fuel cell is good. It does provide some impact absorption. I'm not gonna say a ton. It's a very low profile, low to the ground, so playing in these for extended periods of times probably isn't going to be the best on your knees and your joints. Me personally, I've been back and forth with a lot of shin splints and trying to manage that. Hopefully not any stress fractures or anything, but the fuel cell foam in here is okay. It's very much on par with the Kawhi 1 signature, which in both these cases I feel like it's a denser version of fuel cell compared to some of the team models like the two-way and the, I'm forgetting the name already, the Omnis or Omnis, whatever. I do prefer those fuel cell setups a little bit more than I do on the Kawhi 1 and Kawhi 2 that we have here. They're a little bit less dense. I feel like they're a little bit more balanced as far as court feel and impact protection goes. These are more so just cater towards court feel in my opinion. The Kawhi 2 midsole does still have a smooth transition, so I can appreciate that, and if you are a fan of court feel, you should appreciate that in this as well. But overall, because of the cushion setup, it's not one of those shoes that honestly somebody like me in my current state, I really wouldn't want to play more than like an hour in these. After 2 hours, I don't think it matters what shoe I'm wearing, but there are some shoes that I would prefer to play in to keep me lasting longer on the court and feeling better afterwards compared to the Kawhi 2 because of the cushion setup. Coming in at number 4, also a tough place to put this among the other categories, but I'm going to have to go with the fit. Now these do fit true to size in my opinion. If you are a wide footer, you possibly may want to go a half size up. I don't think that they make wide options for these like they have for some other New Balance performance basketball models, but I would take that wide foot recommendation with a grain of salt. I do believe there are some with wider foots than I have that are fine with these in true to size, or it's a more optimal fit going true to size. So that would be my recommendation actually for pretty much everyone. They do run a little bit narrow through the midfoot, but fortunately these aren't as stiff as the Kawhi 1s were. Lengthwise, I feel like there's just enough room where you should be comfortable going true to size. Definitely no need to go down a half size in any scenario for these in my opinion. Even though they are true to size, where I have some trouble or I guess some critique with the shoe and the fit is pretty much this area here in the toe box, especially where the fuse is not layered over. There's just a little bit of volume above the toe in my opinion, but fortunately I didn't experience any sliding around or any noticeable sliding around within the forefoot of the shoe. So true to size, that's my recommendation. Fit, my number 4 as far as categories for the Kawhi 2. Ranking at number 3 for me and my performance thoughts, I am going to go with the materials here. This was almost going to be my number 4 for the materials just because they went away from some of the raw and genuine raw materials that they implemented on a lot of colorways of the Kawhi 1. But when it comes to the upper of the Kawhi 1, there were a lot of thick cuts of those raw materials, a lot of layering, paneling, almost an over design as far as the upper goes in my opinion. So these are an improvement in the Kawhi 2 as far as the upper goes. Yes, it probably is the cheaper way to manufacture. However, it cuts a lot of weight. It cuts a lot of that stiffness out, minimizes the break-in time. So I do appreciate that. I won't say that there was zero break-in time, but it was a pretty quick break-in my experience. I do have to ding the materials on the Kawhi 2 somewhat, just because in some of the areas where they could have still implemented some of those raw materials, they decided to go with synthetics, mainly being these felt tongue area here. Also on the paneling, I believe it was the two-way that they did a very similar design, and they actually used real suedes and leathers for those areas, but here you just have that felt material. There's a chance that they could have used a little bit less fused. There's a lot of skin fused materials here. You won't be able to see it because it's pretty much translucent, sorry. But yeah, there's a lot of thin plastics, things of that sort around here, so it is kind of a bummer being that they stayed at $160 price point, while there are some signature touches as far as Kawhi Leonard and the inspiration for some of the colorways. They seem to be a little bit truer to Kawhi and the Kawhi 1's design, although again I will say perhaps it was maybe a little bit of an over design. Real quick, going back to the break-in period for the materials, I would say where I experienced some need to break in was pretty much around that 4-foot flex area. You can kind of see where it's dented up front, hopefully. But that was the most area that took just a little bit of break-in. It really wasn't a lot. There was nothing bothersome about it. It's just I kind of noticed over time that that was a little more flexible in that area. For number 2, I'm going to go with the support. Even though this isn't a very wide base that you sit on, you do sit somewhat within the midsole, especially across the lateral side. And then you also have pieces of the outsole wrapping up for extra containment as far as lateral movements go. The torsional support is still beefed up in the Kawhis compared to the team models. However, it is somewhat scaled down from the Kawhi 1 from what I can remember with it. I don't have a Kawhi. I have a few pairs of the Kawhi 1s, but none in reach right now. Probably should have prepared for that, but oh well. Anywho, the torsional support doesn't seem as hefty as it was in the Kawhi 1. However, it is still substantial. So as far as torsional rigidity goes, you should be covered on these with no problem from your average to larger size athletes. I enjoyed the heel lockdown of the shoe, even though it doesn't look like it would be that well as far as locking down, just because around the collar it kind of slopes outward away from the heel and Achilles area. But the actual internal counter that you have, it's pretty much good to go. You do have this big plastic piece on the back here, but that's more stabilization for the heel midsole. It doesn't actually do anything as far as containing you within the shoe, but it does help from you rolling over the footbed, if that makes any sense, just because it's taking away some of that softness that you might get in the midsole heel area. As mentioned before, going true to size, you should get a nice and snug fit, comfortably snug around the midfoot, which helps with the lockdown, especially once you crank things up with the laces. Although the materials are lighter, they do still have a good amount of support in them. So support to me, really no complaints whatsoever about it in the Kawhi 2. And now my number 1 aspect of the Kawhi 2, of course left over, is the traction. I'm not putting this as far as one of the greatest tractions of all times, but as far as its versatility, the pattern, the compound, I think everything pretty much is checked off as far as boxes go with the traction. You should be able to get a decent amount of wear out of these if you play in them outdoors. Not that I would recommend this shoe for outdoors, but as far as traction goes, I do think it should handle fairly decent in an outdoor settings. Indoors, you're good to go as far as wear and durability goes, of course. The pattern I was a little bit concerned about, just because I was wondering if there was enough lateral coverage, but the way things break up in the forefoot and how it kind of goes in a diagonal area, I think is actually perfect for playing and making different movements on the court. Something about the patterns and the aggressiveness of it seems to flick away dust instead of attracting it and kind of keeping it trapped in the grooves. So I do think these perform very well in dusty settings. I was able to play in these securely on some floors where I normally am not able to play too secure. So as far as the traction goes, I think it's awesome in these shoes. Now, as far as my overall thoughts on the New Balance Kawhi 2, I would say so far this year, from what I've played in, these may be a top 3 pick, but it would definitely be 3 if it is within the top 3. There's just certain cushion setups that I'm a little more comfortable with, some cheaper options and better cushion setups that I'm more comfortable with. As I mentioned before, this isn't one of those shoes that I can really play in for more than an hour or so before I switch into something else, but I do think they are a very solid option. Would I take them over last year's team model, the 2-way? No. And that shoe, if not on sale, is still about $20 cheaper than the Kawhi 2 is. So for a shoe that's very very similar to it that I feel gives just as good, if not better performance. Very excited to see what the two-way version 2 plays like, by the way. But for the Kawhi 2, I just feel like there's better options within the brand itself at a lesser price point. If you are a Kawhi fan and you just feel like you just needed some reinforcement to cop these, I definitely wouldn't blame you if you did. I'm not recommending this shoe. I just think there's better options out there, but I definitely wouldn't stop you if you were interested in purchasing this shoe. That's about gonna wrap it up for what I have on the New Balance Kawhi 2 and the performance review. If you would like some more details, a written review perhaps, we will have a link to that you can check out over on WearTesters.com. But as far as this video goes, that is all I have. I want to thank you all so much for all of your continued support. I appreciate you tuning in, and until the next time I see you, y'all take care of yourselves, take care of one another. Leak is out.